love in the time of Hydra, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. 10th anniversary podcast. If you're watching live, it's a day early, but if you're listening on podcast release day, it's November 10th, and we are taking it back to 10 years ago today. On November 10th, 2015, the number one song finally changed. It's Hello by Adele, and the top movie at the box office was the James Bond film Spectre. Obama had just debuted his personal Facebook page. A little late, I think, but keep that going. Two-time Marvel actor and all-around legend Walton Goggins turned 44. Taron Egerton, who many have fan cast as Wolverine, turned 26. And Tracy Morgan, who I'd personally like to see in a Marvel project, turned 47. But the most important thing that happened on November 10th, 2015 was the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode Chaos Theory, aired on ABC at 9/8 Central. Hello, I'm Jamie Girac, and I'm here with my co-host, boyfriend, and level 3 Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan, Tony Paletto. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Jamie. Hello, everyone who's watching, everyone who's listening. Thank you for joining us. Wait, what? Walter Goggins, did he play? You saying he played 2 characters in Marvel?
No, he was in 2 things. He was in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then he was in What If. Then he did What If.
Oh, What If. Right. I was trying to wrap my head around it. Got it.
Yeah, you got it. Tony, we have another exciting episode today. Season 3, we are crushing it.
In the guest department.
Yeah, in the guest department. Our first guest is known for producing and directing many great shows, including Buffy and Dollhouse. He directed 3 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. David Solomon is here. Hi, David.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to have you. But you're not alone. You brought a friend with you today.
I did.
A friend that we discuss a lot on this show. So excited that he is here. The great VFX supervisor of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Mark Kolpack, is here.
Hey.
Look at that.
How are you?
What a roster.
I'm so happy to have you both here. We have a million things to talk about, a million things to ask you about. But I do want to start with your friendship, because you're obviously friends, because David was like, let me call Mark and see if he wants to do it. I'm curious, did you guys meet on Buffy?
You want to take it first, David? Yeah.
We did.
We're good.
Although I don't remember. But yes, we did.
Here's the funny thing is that when David and I first started working together on S.H.I.E.L.D., and then we started talking about history of stuff and Buffy, and I said, in season 5, I did a lot of, I supervised about, 6 episodes. And I said, the one I loved the most was we were up in Griffith Park in this place called The Grove, and I had to flay the skin off it. And David looks at me and says, I directed that episode. I said, really? And so neither of us remembered working with each other.
That's true.
So maybe
is that when Dark Willow rips the skin off of the dude? Oh, yes. That's a memorable moment.
Yeah. Villains is the name of that episode, and it rocks.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we were, and it was so cold that night, freezing.
And that poor guy had no shirt on and no skin on after that.
Yay, acting. Skin on it.
The chat's going crazy because we have a rule on this show where a drinking rule where if Buffy comes up, you have to drink, because I talk about that show.
We talk about Buffy endlessly.
And today's the day. Right. We only have water today, but so you had to remember that you had met that time. Do you kind of remember re-meeting and becoming friends?
Yeah, it was on S.H.I.E.L.D., right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We just sort of hit it off. It was one of those things where, one of the first episodes I did with David, we were talking about a visual effect, and I was going, that might be a little challenging, in terms of just the technical of multiple passes. And he goes, it's going to work. You're going to love it. And I said, okay, fine, let's do it.
I like that directing style, David.
But look, he's being modest. Mark was the magician of this show. A lot of times you go on a show and somebody will say I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, and it never comes out quite like how they described. Every time Mark does something, it's way better than I could describe it.
Thank you.
And
we remark on him a lot.
He did this on every episode. It was
That's
amazing.
A great segue into Mark. You were on the show from the beginning. You were there from start to finish. And the thing that makes your work so incredible on the show is that we all know you're working with a network TV budget. which the constraints we all know are crazy. Can you talk a little bit about just the journey of that and the start on the show and having to do your job under those constraints?
So it started with me noticing shows that were coming up to be done, pilots. And I saw Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and I had done Heroes and I had done No Ordinary Family. And I said, oh my God, this is my wheelhouse, right? So I looked and I went down, I saw Joss Whedon, right? And went, oh, well, all right. Well, I know how he sort of works with visual effects and he always uses this one company. And I thought, not going to happen. My agent, I talked to her and she says, I'm going to get you a meeting. I said, well, it's not going to happen, because Joss always works for this one company and it's just, he's loyal, And so she said, well, you don't know that. I said, I know that. She says, you don't know that. I said, I know that. And she says, I'm going to call Jeff Lowe. He loves you from Heroes, blah, blah, blah. And I said, good luck with that. It was like, have fun storming the castle, it's just not going to work out. And she calls back. I got you a meeting. I'm like, you're kidding me. Really? So I went in for the meeting. Of course, I looked at the written check-in roster to see who maybe went in before me. And it was a big meeting. I mean, it was like Loeb was there and Gary Brown and Jed and Marissa and the production designer, Gregory Melton, and Chris Jeremy. And it was the post producer. And it was like, it's a pretty big meeting. But the one person who wasn't there was Joss. And I thought, I was all ready for my performance and the king doesn't show up. And so I didn't realize they were just weeding out the initial interviews, So anyways, they asked me, they said, well, how do you see doing this? I said, protecting the brand. Ooh. And they said, what do you mean? I said, this is Marvel's first live action show. I said, everyone knows what Marvel features look like. And this show cannot come in. We can't do what the features can do, but we have to make it look like we are. And we have to have that. Because if we come in and we do these visual effects and they look like mediocre television visual effects, we're going to be done, Yeah. And so they asked me to do a breakdown. I did. I came back for another meeting and then Joss was there. And so we went through it and, I didn't know whether I should include the numbers. So I printed the budget without the numbers. He goes, look does it cost a thing? and so anyways, I left the room, showed him my reel, all the stuff I had done and that kind of stuff. And when I left the room and they all kind of looked at Josh, he goes, he's the guy.
Oh, that's great.
And so I got it. And so, yeah, was it challenging? Yeah. I mean, our budgets, look at our budget for television for a broadcast show. I could talk about it now, I guess. We started off at like $380,000 an episode, wow. Which was a fair amount of money, right? Because a lot of things were like 80,000. One of our vendors, one of our budgets to a company called Fuse Effects, which is now called Folks. We were a 10-to-1 ratio for all their other shows. So for every one of ours, it took 10 to match ours. So, but the thing that I think I loved about working on this show and with David and all the other directors that came through is that all the work was done by artists essentially in Los Angeles. So we didn't farm it out to all over the world. Everyone was eager to work on the show. Everyone at the time was just loving Marvel, Marvel products. And and we had a really great, producer named Gary Brown who was able to rob Peter to pay Paul. So because, you have a pattern budget and sometimes the shows were bigger and then he would have to find money from other areas and he would do it every time. We didn't have carte blanche. It wasn't that at all, but the important stuff we knew how to fight for. And so basically the challenge in this show for visual effects is sometimes you can't tell the moment in 4 shots. I had to figure out how to tell everything in 1 shot. And that was usually the trick,
Interesting. It's funny to hear you talk about Gary because he's been on our podcast and he talks about you. So it's fun to one day maybe we can get you on together. David, I want to ask about you getting the call. This is your second episode, Chaos Theory. You did One Door Closes in season 2. This is I feel like Yeah. Oh, I mean, you got to direct Edward James Olmos and Lucy Lawless. That's such a good episode.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember getting that call and what it was like to play in this new but maybe familiar sandbox because you're working with some of the same people you've worked with before?
Well, I know most of the people, or knew most of the people at that time, and it was really about my schedule because I was kind of busy in those years, and I had a hard time getting back to the show when I wanted to, because I thought it was a great show and I wanted to do more, but I was kind of taking all different directions. But it was fun to come back there because it was Joss's baby originally, but he wasn't really on the show, in a day-to-day way. But I love Jed and Marissa and Jeff, and they're great people. It was just really fun to do. And I don't know if anybody knows this, but I was actually directing the second episode, and I had done one day of shooting, and oh my God, his name just went out. Clark broke his arm or broke something, and we had to shut down for 2 weeks. And they said, can you come back in 2 weeks? I said, I cannot, because I have 5 different things that are right in front of me right now, and I can't come back. It took me a year to get back.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't
that's
get back
wild.
till
Clark Gregg is such a wimp. He just
Yeah, I
directed
know.
the whole.
That's what I said. But it's
Yeah, he
literally we
tore
finished
his
one day of
biceps
shooting,
tendon.
and we came in for the second day, and Gary came down there and he went ladies and gentlemen, I have something to tell you. We're shutting the show down for 2 weeks, and that's what happened. And a friend of mine did the episode, which was fine, and I'd already scouted it and stuff, and we picked actors and things, and so he just sort of took over.
Okay.
And it was
Mark,
great.
you said it was his bicep.
Yeah, it was.
I
It
can't
was.
remember what it was exactly. All I remember is somebody very fancy at Disney said, take my jet and go to New York because this guy's the best orthopedic surgeon in the world, and that's the only person you can go to. And Clark went,
And that's
Wow.
exactly what it was.
Okay.
It was the scene from. We're talking about season 1, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would have been 084. Is the
Yeah,
second
and they
episode.
were, and they, yeah, the OF, and they were. We were on the bus, and there was a scene where the side part of the fuselage blew out, and so they were getting sucked out. So Clark was suspended with a wire thing, but a girl was being dragged, an actor was being dragged, and they had to lock arms, and it was all great. And then someone said, "All right, let's just do one more for safety." Snap.
Oh.
Snap. Yikes, man.
By the way, I was on the set when they were shooting that. That was David Straighton, I think, shooting.
Yeah, David. Yeah.
And it looked fantastic. I was like, oh my
Doesn't it
God,
always?
I love the door of the plane goes out and everybody's flying around. It was great. And if you got to go out, you might as well go out with a good shot,
Yeah.
Yeah, put it in.
Oh. And
Yeah.
who knew 2 years later he wouldn't even need his arm? So
Yeah.
That's right.
Before I have so many more questions, but I do want to shout out to our audience. We've got a poppin' live chat today. Thank you guys so much for being here live. If you have questions for David or Mark, save them for the end when we kick Tony out, and I will ask them for you. We love questions. Tony, explain why we kick you out. What's that about?
Well, I'll tell you all about it. The rules are don't spoil anything. If you're going to say something in the comments that's pertaining to anything after this episode, just put spoiler alert before your remark. And that protects people like me who are watching the show for the first time and want to go in fresh as though it were 10 years ago. And then, yes, Mark and David, I get kicked out at the end of the show. It's our favorite segment. It's called Tony Leaves the Room. And then the three of you can talk openly with Jamie about
you.
what happens beyond.
Yeah, about Tony.
About me.
It's actually,
Yeah.
That's
so
the
Tony,
secret.
It begs the question: what were you doing 10 years ago that you were so busy you couldn't
That's what I
watch the
keep
show?
wondering.
You know what? I'll tell you. I watched the first episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. when it came out because I loved Marvel then. I love Marvel now, and I didn't like it. And so what happened was I got together with Jamie many years later, and she introduced me to a little show called Buffy, and then a little show called Angel. And
I've heard of them.
Yeah, I think he might have. But what I realized is that I never watched network television ever, really. I've always been a movie guy. And when I did start watching televised entertainment, like TV shows and shit, it was like in Mad Men and Breaking Bad, where all of a sudden we were in a golden age or whatever. So I was just very much unfamiliar with the format, with the style, and watching Buffy and Angel really acclimated me to it. And I developed a lot of affection for long form, like long season network television shows. And then I went into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with this project that we have here, and I liked it a lot, and I have been liking it a lot since.
Yeah, we had those difficult first 10 episodes in season 1 because we were treading water due to Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we had the centipede, and we had, and all that kind of stuff. And so we weren't, we were sort of a one-off episode show every week, and that really wasn't, what the producers wanted to do. But we, like I said, they had to tread water for a bit till Winter Soldier came out, and then we were able to do our thing.
Yeah.
That's interesting to hear it from that perspective, because Buffy has its Monster of the Week kind of first season, and then but then it becomes much more involved, more drama, more character, but it's interesting the idea of like doing one-off episodes for the sake of like you had to buy time until a film release. That's a unique situation to be in.
Yeah, because we were supposed to have this sort of synergy between television and film, and it really became more two distinct entities. There wasn't a whole lot of cross-pollination. I think S.H.I.E.L.D. was kind of designed to be this like, hey, there's this program in between the movie releases, and then it just became like, I think they realized they were trying to just, keep oil and water together kind of thing. And it was just like, okay, S.H.I.E.L.D. is distinct. We're in our own universe kind of deal. And the features are in theirs. Like that.
It ended up working beautifully.
Yeah.
David, I want to ask you about working with the writer of this episode, Lauren LaFranc, who went on to create the incredible show The Penguin. She was nominated for 2 Emmys. Amazing. I know it's been 10 years, but do you have any memory of that collaboration of working with the writer of Chaos Theory?
Yeah. She's lovely. She's a very talented writer and a really nice person, and she lets us do our thing, and my wife's a TV writer. I'm happy to listen to whatever they have to say and see if we can't make it work. I have a way when I work, when I go in and let the actors do whatever they want to do in the very first try for everything I do, and then I go in and go sort of refine it and kind of don't do that, please do this, and don't do that, and turn over here, things like that. And oftentimes you'll get somebody who sits behind you, the writer will, and they'll say, can I just ask a question, or can I give you a suggestion or something like that? And I always say, like, let me walk in and talk to the actors first, and then I will come back out and ask you what you have to say. Because I don't want to... It's really important to me to get the best performance, and the only way to do that is to give actors a little bit of leeway. You have to say, I need to see what you are bringing to the table, and we'll talk about it then. Because I don't like when you go out there and go like, look, this has to be like this, and you have to stand over here, and you have to act like this is happening. They need to be part of it, or it just doesn't work. I don't think it does. Yeah. And that's I've done that my entire career. Where
Good.
I hope I get the best performances out of everybody.
I love to hear that. That's amazing. Mark, backtracking a little, I feel like everyone knows what you do, but they don't know what your kind of day-to-day is. How much time do you spend on set versus what you're doing in post? How closely do you work with directors? What is your day with David like when you're doing an episode like this?
With David, it's about sandwiches.
Well, we can respect that. Yeah.
No, my day-to-day starts like this. Basically, I'm juggling. One show is being shot, another show is prepping, and 3 are in post and I'm juggling sometimes 300 to 400 shots in my head between reviews. I have my producer Sabrina Arnold, who's been a fantastic partner in crime on that, and my VFX editor and Brianna Abbey, who was our VFX coordinator, and the four of us were a foursome. I did not in those days have like a data wrangler and an on-set supervisor and those kind of things. So I was the guy that had to be everywhere. And it was always like this. We would have some days, and David knows this, we'd have like a double up day, which means someone was shooting a simul unit or a second unit for either visual effects or fight sequence that has some visual effects in it, and then David would be on main unit, directing his stuff. And I would always say to the first AD, okay, so let's talk about schedule of this, because it's just me. And they go, oh, no, it's okay. We're going to do stuff in the morning. David's got things in the morning, and then we'll be in the afternoon. And then every single time it happens at exactly the same time. First unit, and then they're both saying, and then I see a PA with like these panicked eyes. They need you on first unit. I go, I'm in motion control here. I don't know what to tell you. I'll be there in a moment. Let me just get this going, and I'd run over to whoever was on that set. So I would be on set. I would be in the meetings. I would be breaking down the scripts, going through the budgets, and then having reviews with the producers and the editors and the directors. The directors would be like, David might be in post, and he'd say, hey, can Kolpack come in here? And he knows we shot this, but here, and I would go in and say, what's the question? This and this. I go, this and this. Great, thank you. I would leave. So it was just jam packed all the time, and I was always on the go. Sometimes I was pulled out of a meeting, because they're calling for me on set. So, and then I would have what I call vendor days, which is days that I would schedule in to go to each of the VFX houses to sit in the screening room and go over the work with them and give notes directly, because I'm one of these guys that I don't like to rely on emails or a phone call because here's what happens. I give a bunch of notes, and then they assemble their team back at the house, and someone will say, oh, wait, he said this. Wait, did he say that or this? What do you think he meant? And they go, should we call? No, let's not bother him. I always say, bother me, please, because time's exponential. If they render something, I lose not a day, I lose days if it's wrong. So that could make the difference between settling for version 5 and version 8. Which makes
so a pretty effortless job, you're saying?
Yeah, it sounds super chill. Really
easy. You have to pivot a lot. I've been doing this a long time, so I listen to the directors. I always say to like David or whomever, I say, I'm here to help as much as you'll let me help you. And every director has their own personalities, and some are more closed, some are more open. David's like, so what are we doing here? What do we want to do? And I'll say, well, we're going to do this. Okay. Or he says, you know what? I'm thinking this. Don't you think that would be kind of cool? And I go, yeah, that works too. And then we just sort of figure it out. I mean, everything's planned. We do have a VFX meeting where we sit and we go page by page, scene by scene, shot to shot. And, David's been doing this a long time. So for him, it's like, I'll say, it's this pass, this pass, this pass. He goes, okay, great. Got it. Done that before, and we go on. Newer directors, a little more hand holding. Sometimes they're not good with cues. If you got a series of cues that you got to call out for the actors. I've had a director say, can you just do it? I don't know. So you know what? Can you do it? I said, sure.
That's
Guest director
me.
Mark Kolpack.
Yeah. Mark did direct an episode in season 6 that we when we get to it. Yes, but we're still on season 3. David, you were going to.
I'll see you in about several years from now.
Yeah, a few years.
We've got.
I'll be like really old looking.
A few years to go.
Yeah. David, I felt like you were going to tag on.
What's that?
Part of the reason Mark and I get along so well is I was a film editor before I was director. So a lot of the technical things that I had to do as an editor, like, works perfectly in with the visual effects, especially having coming off 7 years of Buffy. So
Yeah.
Exactly. And I started my career in film editing as well. I was an apprentice and assistant. So it was like, we speak the same language. And mostly, look, I'll be honest. I mean, Dave and I, we just make jokes all the time and we just roll through the stuff. Everything is about the work. Yeah. But we also have a pretty good time, doing it.
That's important.
TV, it's meant to be fun. It's not supposed to be too hard.
Yeah, it's a dream job in a lot of ways. Speaking of that, I have a question for both of you before we really dive into this episode. And David, I'll ask you first. You revisited this episode, Chaos Theory, after 10 years. I'm just curious from an artistic standpoint, what's it like looking back on something you've worked on? Do you revisit your work often? Is this common or rare for you?
Every once in a while, I'll look at an old show. I don't know why, just because I'm thinking about something, and I sometimes do that before I'm going off to shoot something else, and I want to remind myself of something, but I'm not exactly sure what. So I'll look at an old episode, something that I liked that had like a big action sequence or a big heavy duty acting, heavy lift. But it's like, honestly, I just remember bits and pieces of so many. I mean, I've done more than 100 episodes, so it's hard to keep track of them all. But this one, when I think about it, the only thing I could remember was that there was two monsters fighting in a room, and I wished it wouldn't have been there. You know what I mean? It's like it felt so weirdly claustrophobic of these two guys going after each other in like a weird office setting, which I thought was very strange and stuff. And that's the thing I remembered about the episode. And I was kind of not looking forward to watching it. And I watched it. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. There's a whole bunch of really good stuff in here.
Yeah, it looks great.
I mean, I just had like this weird feeling in the back of my head, like that thing always bugged me.
Yeah, I literally had in my notes to ask, like, these are tight spaces. So I'm glad that came up.
I know, but it had to be like what it was, though, because that's the words that were on the page, and that was what, your job is to bring to life the words that are there. Your job is not to say like, oh, that's seemed like an okay idea, but everyone else is a better idea, so we'll do that. Nobody does that. That's what we make the script that we're given, and it's nice. And the script was lovely and had really great acting moments in there, I think, for almost all of the characters. And so that's the kind of stuff that turns me on. I love that.
Mark, what about you? Revisiting something like this, is that common for you?
Usually I can remember. Usually if I remember the director, I can recall the episode or episodes. So this one I thought I knew it right off the bat, and I did, but I decided to watch the whole thing because I was going, oh yeah, there was all of this, kind of like what David was saying, and I do, and I as well bumped at the location of this strange, sort of wood paneled kind of Van Nuys warehouse kind of thing in this cocoon.
That's exactly
of S.H.I.E.L.D.
what it was.
We're in Van Nuys.
Yeah, and it was just kind of like, I go, why were we there for that location? I was trying to remember, was there some reason, the proximity to something? I don't know what it was, but it was just so funny that the show had so much great art direction, and yet we were in this kind of funny, funky thing with her handcuffed to this, compressor. And so anyways, but then recalling the fight between Lincoln and Lash and doing those moments and the whole thing with Lash, was a really fun character to create. I mean, the episode where the one that happened before, which was in the mini mart or whatever that setting, and so the kid is there and he transforms. Well, I took Blair over to the Sony Studios motion capture stage. So that was all his acting of the transformation process. And we had to build several, we had scanned Blair, meaning we turned him into a digital, character, so then Fuse Effects built several different scale sizes of him up to the 6'10" guy, that became that. So So a lot of times what you see in Shield is what I call the ABC method, which is basically we would start with something that was real, and then B was the visual effect, and then C was back to real. So if a prop, if a prop was made and the actors are holding it and then they do this and then it would open up into something else, that would be the visual effect mid moment, and then they would have another prop that was the finished one so they can keep going and we wouldn't have to keep spending money on visual effects. But that whole thing was just a big process between Blair and then Fuse and getting that whole transformation. So it was like digital double Blair, another kind of digital double of Blair, bigger, and then we also scanned the actor who played Lash in his whole outfit. So all his makeup, his hair, everything. Had to redo the hair, all CG, because you can't scan hair. That doesn't animate later, so you have to build that in the grooming tools. And so anyway, but yeah, and it was just a lot of fun to revisit him again, because he was such a imposing character.
Yeah, he's cool. He looks cool. I'm going to go through the episode a little bit from the beginning, but a big part of this podcast is Tony is watching for the first time. So Tony, I just have to ask, did you like this one? What do you think?
It's kind of embarrassing to say I didn't love this episode, especially that we got Mark and David here. But I got to tell you, it wasn't a directing issue or an effects issue. It's this what they've done with Blair Underwood's character. Like you remember, Jamie, like 2 episodes ago, I was like kind of lukewarm on. It's like, so he's Lash, and you're like, yeah, and I'm like, why? And you're like, well, you're gonna find out. And I'm like, okay, I'm sure we'll find the reason why. And then, but I was also confused about the motivation why. So for it to have been this spooky book that Shield just gave him without investigating, that admitted some sort of
he's the person. He's the one investigating it.
I guess he gets misted by the stuff and turns into a monster, but he's getting his brain taken over by this possession. So it's really not Blair Underwood's character at all.
That's who he truly is. See, I think that you're just explaining what makes it cool.
You think I'm explaining what makes it cool? Man. But I will say this: I love the dramatic. I love what it does dramatically. I love what it does between him and May. I love their scenes together in this. And I also think Blair's performance is really great because he's been so warm and lovely throughout this show. But all he has to do is turn the dial, because he's an imposing guy. He turns that dial a little bit and he's scary. Not even when he's Lash, when he's just being his normal self, when he's thinking about killing the guy with Andrew, you just see the gears grinding. He's like, am I going to kill you right now? It's frightful. So there's a lot I did like about it. I was honestly surprised how much of the plot lines going on came to a head. I'm surprised that Lash is already in a box this early on, and I like that. Because you see a monster like that you establish first episode of this season or second, and I think that we're kind of in the long run with this guy, but we've contained it, which just kind of opens us up for more story. So I didn't dislike the episode. I'm just like mid on the Andrew stuff. That's all.
Okay, that's fair, I guess.
That's fair.
I think you're wrong.
Fine, I'll be wrong. I'm here being wrong. In fact, I'm in the room at some point. You can all talk about it.
It's all subjective. I mean,
don't let this be the beginning of your the end of your relationship.
Yeah,
it's collapsing.
We're gonna break
live.
up over Lash. That's what it took. Was that? I do. Okay, so the episode does start in Maui in a flashback. Now, obviously, I don't think you were filming in Hawaii.
No, we went to Maui to do that scene. No,
really?
Nice.
That can't be true.
Nice.
I was like,
Nice.
no way. That's insane.
Probably
Were you
Marina
just
Del
here?
Rey or somewhere.
Yeah.
I think we were in Manhattan Beach all together.
Mm-hmm.
But
We always try to spot. Yeah, look good. But we live in LA. We know the truth.
I believe
Yeah.
that May was looking out at the ocean in Maui. Lovely moment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just like the lighting on that whole color grade. I thought it was really pretty.
It's very
Yeah, it
handsome
was
looking.
good.
Yeah, this episode looks good. Everything about it is just pretty. And we're talking about, the flashback of how Andrew does, become Lash. And it's so funny. I've seen these episodes 7 or 8 times each. But for some reason in my brain, I forgot how the book thing. I thought he like ate some fish in Hawaii.
The fish oil.
Like
Yeah.
Oh,
I
because
totally
that storyline happens, yeah.
yeah, I totally forgot. But I really want to talk, Mark, about Terragenesis because it's such a cool thing that you get to do, throughout the show. And I'd love to just hear a little bit about the creation of that look.
So everything that I try to bring to the visual effects work is always rooted in story and character. And I'm always creating either a science that's actually real science or a pseudoscience that makes sense. Everything has to have the proper genome for me. It's not just like, hey, this happens. Why? Just because it does. There has to be a logic to everything. And so this was some kind of, like with Coulson's hand that gets, severed. It was this necrotic kind of, look that we had come up with. And so therefore I called it volcanic necrosis, which was the whole chrysalis that went over that cocooned them or killed them. And so, yeah, so what I would do, like with Blair and other actors who went through the Terragenesis process, they would say, well, what is that like? And I would say, it's like you're drowning. And so it starts from the bottom. So imagine yourself, the water's rising. And that's why you'll see Blair and other actors, they'll do this thing. They'll say, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you're trying to get your nose and mouth above the water and it's coming up and then it overcomes you. And so that was the sort of motivation in terms of how the effect worked. Because one of the things that I would do is that, working with like David or any of the other directors, I say, look at that, I would come in with what Clark would call, he used to call my iPad, the iPad of destiny, because on it was all of the concepts and stuff that I was bringing to that episode or what it was. Because if you say there's a monster and 4 people have to see the monster at once, 4 people are seeing 4 different kinds of monsters in their head, right? They're not seeing the same thing. It doesn't matter whether you say it has tentacles or it has whatever, doesn't matter. And so I would come on and I would say, this is the monster. And they would go, oh, that's cool. Now everyone's seeing the same thing. And I would show the director so they would see it. They go, okay, great. That's really cool. Okay. Show it to them so they know what it is, and so, I would come in and show what the design looked like. And then I would just say, it's coming and you can't move and you're overcome and you're drowning and there you go. And then it just cracks off and, and that kind of thing. And obviously it started with Chloe in episode 210, I believe, right?
Yes.
Where she becomes Quake.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And everything. So and it was that kind of thing. And it was the first time we were doing that. And so, when I talked to Chloe, it was like, I asked the director, I said, would you mind if I just talked to her about, this moment and everything? So, we went through it and she thought it was just this. And I was, we were using a camera called the Phantom Flex, which I was shooting her at like 650 frames per second. So it's like 24 times, something like that. Yeah. Cool. So, and we had this lovely director, I can't remember his name now, but an older gentleman, and it was an important moment. So all the brass was there. Every producer on the show was there. Jeff Bell and Jeff Loeb and Megan Thomas Bradner, and everybody was, on set at Video Village where all the monitors are and they can watch. And so Michael Zimberg, thank you. Lovely man. So Michael said, so we do a take 1. And Michael goes, and by the way, this was the most compressed schedule ever. We had front loaded all the visual effects. This show had to be done something like 3 days after wrap for air. Wow. I mean, it was like ridiculous. So the editor was like cutting sequences, running down, showing it on the laptop to Michael to sign off, so we could pull plates and get things in the way. It was crazy. And so we do a take 1 and he goes, all right, got it. And I said, no, we don't have it yet. He goes, really? I go, he said, I thought we had that. He goes, no, we don't have it yet. I said, look, FX is blowing the air on Chloe. These things have to sync up. It's not there yet. I said, when it's there, we're all going to know. And so I said, would you mind if I just bring Chloe over to show her this take? Because, it'd be easier that way than trying to just talk about it, So I brought her over and she goes, oh, I get it. Okay, I can do better. And so she went back to her mark and we did it again. And Michael goes, all right, we got it. And I said, we don't have it. He says, really? He says, Mark, I think you're gilding the lily here. And I said, I'm telling you, not. He said, and everyone's looking at our conversation from Video Village, like, where's this going to go? Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? What's going to happen with me and Michael? And so take 3. All right. No. 4. He looks at me. No. 5. And then 6 hits. And we play it back and everyone at the monitor goes, ooh.
Nice, man.
Now we have it.
Nice. That's a good job making your expertise known and communicating it and making it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
It's look, I care about the show and I knew what it had to look like, because I was going to be the guy leading that creative later on. And well, actually, it wasn't much later. It was going to be right away with that episode. But it's just look at it. There are battles that you have to fight for, and then there are ones that you have to pick and say, that's not one I can. I got to go for this one. And I let that one go. But basically, every shot had to succeed. Whether it was for me it was the visual effects shots. For the director, it's every shot. Every setup. But you have to fight for what you believe in. And I don't mean physically fight. Like yelling at people. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying passionate about things.
Oh yeah,
that's what makes good art. You gotta fight for what you believe in.
Exactly.
I want to bring up. So we get a lot of stuff with Gemma and Fitz in this episode, and I just wrote in my notes, so tragically awkward. I love it so much, and it made me wonder. David, when you were directing Buffy episodes, you're also a producer. You're very aware of everything that's going on in that show. But in this show and in other shows you direct, you're just kind of popping in.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that? Are you asking people like, can you give me all the drama that's coming?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
How does that work?
I don't have time to watch all the episodes, because I just don't have time.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We used to say you either work in TV or watch TV. You can't really do both because, we work crazy hours. And I think I've seen 3 episodes of Seinfeld in my whole life because those were my busy years. But it's you just kind of go in and say, what do I need to know here about this scene? What's happened to her in the last 4 or 5 and what's about to come up in the next ones following this, so I can keep her on track, and that's the important thing. It's the through line for each character. And
is this a conversation you're having with producers, writers, actors, or just writers?
Actually, anybody. Anybody that knows. Like, I'll go to a writer and ask them, and they'll go like, oh, gee, I'm not really sure. Let me go check. Or I'll ask the actor and say, like, look, what was the thing that you were hung up on, 2 episodes ago, so I can know to keep you in the same line here. So your character isn't like spinning off into the universe. And those are the kind of things that those are like little hallway meetings, you don't have them in an official meeting. You go like, look, just tell me about what she needs to know, and I'm going to go in and talk to her about that. And that's all it really is. It's nothing more complicated than that. Some of those things change though. Some of those things are like, there's big things that I didn't know occasionally, and you go in and go like, okay, so tell me about this, and somebody says that, and I'm like, oh shit, like I better I have got to completely rethink what I am about to do in this next scene.
Wow.
And that's happened several times.
Yeah.
Where
That's
you
pretty
just
cool.
you just didn't ask the question soon enough, and I suddenly were working on it, and I'm thinking like, gee, I don't really understand what's going on here. let me go see what I've missed.
Yeah.
And then I go like, oh, did this happen and that happen? And they went like, yeah, oh, okay, that. Everyone come back. Let's try again.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Mark's in the back, like, nope, take it again.
Nope. Take 6.
I mean, honestly, that's really what it's like. It's look, I've been on a set before where I block the whole scene. We get all the lights up, we get everything going, and we start working. And I'm watching the third take of this master, and all of a sudden I went like, okay, you know what? I'm not feeling this. Everyone just take a step back for 5 minutes, and we're going to rethink this. And that's kind of the way I work, because it's once you realize you've made a mistake, you can't just like continue making it. You have to say like, we're going to stop now and change it back to what it needs to be. And that's just, it's a fluid art, it just is. Things change all the time and in the moment.
Cool. I'm glad I asked, because it's so interesting the way TV direction is. It's so different from everything else. I want to bring up Andrew going to see Joey in the cocoon, and Joey is like learning to create things with his metal powers. Mark, it got me thinking about just like the fun you get to have working with these powers, but there's also got to be some, constrictions. Were there any powers on the show that you wanted to be able to use, but it would cost too much, it went too far, or did Joey want to build more than just a ball, be kind of a thing?
It's funny. I remember Jed one time. Oh, it was like after the pilot, he said, "So we're not going to have any superheroes or anything like that on this show, or things. It's just going to be agents doing stuff." And I looked at him, and I guess my having no poker face, and he looked at me, he goes, "Oh, look at Mark's got all poopy face," and he goes, no, I'm just funny you, because look at, I mean, this show was kind of a unicorn for a guy like me, honestly, because I touched every aspect of visual effects essentially that had to be done, between hard surface things, character animation, effects animation. I mean, insane amount of stuff. So with him, with Joey, that was Juan Pablo, right? Juan Pablo was the actor. Lovely guy. Really, it was always about, again, helping integrate them so the effects and the performance work like this and not like this. This is what makes things happen, and the magic, and this is when it just becomes stillborn. And so it's always about the hands and sort of talking through them, saying, listen, you're doing stuff. So it wasn't just like I'm thinking it and it happens. It's
That's
like, he had to kind of like sculpt it. So I said, you're really sculpting through this, but we want to have hands that look like you're kind of working it, you're trying to come up, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, he makes a ball, which he wasn't very good at it yet, So, I mean, but hey, it's really just about always trying to bring the humanity into the effects and,
awesome.
and make that work. And that's why I think, the work in S.H.I.E.L.D., it's just people remember it because it integrated.
Good.
Yeah, it's just integrated.
I have to bring up the Coulson and Roz of it all. When she offered to help tie that tie, Tony went, yeah. And he's
I've been, previous episodes, I've been asked, I'm like, I want them to have sex. I'm super into it. And now she's, I mean, she's talking to Powers Booth on the phone, who he knows a crooked bastard. And it's like, I'm not cashing in the chips yet, because there's a lot of double agent business going on in this show. And so I'm not saying she is or isn't bad yet. I can't commit, but like, I'm mad because either way, Coulson's been played. Like, he was putting on his tie thinking he was going to meet the president of the United States. And I'm like, God, Coulson, like, he's always just, he got seduced. He got seduced. And I'm a little bummed. I mean, he deploys charm in everything that he does, in terms of interaction with people. So to have it done to him in a way that kind of, I feel like the wool's been pulled over his eyes a little bit, and I'm mad at him.
It would be very easy to be seduced by Constance Zimmer.
Hell yeah.
David,
I
I'm
was
gonna
on
bring
board.
this up. Yeah, so David worked on Unreal, which is an incredible show with Constance Zimmer is amazing on that show, and
She's amazing.
you had directed her already on that show before you came and did this. How was it? I would love to just hear about directing her because she's incredible.
I absolutely love this woman. She is such a smart actress and just a great person. I mean, really lovely. And she has a voice and a laugh that you can hear across the stage. Like when she walks onto the stage, everybody knows exactly where she is. She has a big, funny laugh. She's got a very unique voice, and she is wildly talented. I mean, and a lovely person. I mean, you couldn't ask for better than this. And I was so happy to see her there because I didn't know that she was on it.
Oh,
And we hadn't, we finished our run, and I went off and did something else. Then I came here and I went like, yeah, so who plays Roz? they go Constance Zimmer. I went like, oh, this is going to be easy. She's just so great.
What a blast! That's so wild that you didn't know until
I didn't know. I mean, we didn't. Like a lot of times you're on a set and you go like, oh, we're going to be friends and we're going to go out to coffee or we do it. And nobody does anything like that because you're too busy. And then all of a sudden you like show up and go like, oh, well, somebody just gave me a great gift. Thank you.
My friends are here.
Yeah, exactly. My friends. And
I love that.
That kind of stuff's great. It's great. And I loved working with her again. And I loved working with Blair Underwood. I remember seeing him in some shows, and he always like just sort of stood out to me. And he's a handsome guy, and he's a great actor. It was just an episode like this is just really fun to do because there's no big mess anywhere, and nobody's complaining about stuff, and people they're happy to come to work, and they're lovely people, very talented. It's great. It's a great thing.
We keep hearing that, like everybody, everybody involved in this show.
It's true. And by the way, the entire crew was like that too. They were happy to be there every day. People throwing out ideas and saying like, what if we did this? What about that? I think we could do better. Stuff like that. It's just great. I mean, that does not happen everywhere, but it happened here like pretty much every day.
I guess that's part of the unicorn thing that you were talking about, Mark, and that
it is.
Good environment.
I mean, when I did Heroes season 1, I kept waiting for like the bad episode to appear. The poorly written script that was just like, oh, that's a stinker.
Yeah.
And it never came. 22 episodes. It was like I only did season 1 because I went off and did something else, and it was just like the best writers were assembled. I mean, the whole team was great. Everyone was just rolling in the same direction, and I thought, this is magic. I'm never going to get this again, and then along came Shield, and everybody, like what David said, everybody from the beginning, I mean, people moved up, I mean, Kyle Jewell was the first assistant, camera guy, and then he was an operator, and then he became a DP on the show, I mean,
he was good too.
Yeah, cool. He was really good. He DP'd my episode. So, I mean, it was just like everybody was dedicated, and that extends into the VFX houses. Every artist, where can I do an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. shot? They wanted to be on the teams. Everyone was really into it, and that kind of energy and that kind of excitement translates into just making magic happen.
Yeah, and you know what? It's just. It just makes everything feel like it's all working great, and I love that feeling. Like I was in a meeting in Buffy one time and somebody said, okay, so this kid runs down a pier and turns into a flock of crows. And nobody ever said anything other than how many crows. And it's just like, that's just a perfect example of like, you start to speak the language of a show and you don't realize what you're saying. It's just like, well, crows, yeah, sure, no problem. Every kid will turn into a flock of crows, of course.
Yeah.
And then, you don't even think about how weird that is. You just think about how do we make it work, and let's just get going. And
That was it.
yeah.
It's funny, I got to watch the evolution of knowledge on the show. When we did the pilot, Jed and Marissa wrote, I think, on Spartacus with Jeff Bell and for a bit, and Gary Brown was very rooted into practical effects and special effects and practical stunts, and then I came along as sort of this bull in a china shop, and I kept saying, well, you shouldn't use a descender rig because they slow down at the end. We want the exact velocity to hit, as it was with what gravity would do. And so for me, it was exciting because, I would show early versions of stuff. Sometimes it's just blocking, and blocking is where the object that's CG is just fully gray, and it's just about getting the animation right and the weight right and getting sign off on that before we go to all the other renders and lighting and everything else. And so I would just sometimes look at the boyish wonder in Jed's eyes, in the early days of this. He'd just be like, oh my God, this is gonna be so good. And then later seasons, like, so yeah, is that gonna be, but everyone then just grew to accept. And Gary Brown was like, we get into meetings, and he we'll just VFX it, where before he was like trying to figure out how to do it practically, and then he just goes, we don't have time for the setup for this, we just got to go VFX wise, because that's television. I mean, the classic example of television directing, as David has probably heard this a million times, is in the morning you're shooting Gone with the Wind, in the afternoon you're shooting Dukes of Hazzard. Just accelerates, so just like getting it done, the day done, So
that's why I always put the biggest, hardest scenes in the beginning.
Yeah.
Smart. There's a lot that left in this episode, but I think you guys really covered the big stuff, the important stuff we wanted to talk about. So it is about that time where we're gonna kick Tony out. Tony, I want to leave you on a final thought, which is I want to know who your MVP of this episode was.
I've been sitting here thinking about it. This is actually a really hard one because you've got amazing stuff from Ian DeCastiger, and you've got Ming-Na Wen, and you've got Blair Underwood, and Elizabeth. But I'm going to go with Blair just because it's a really cool performance. I just was really, as I mentioned before, love watching an actor just torque it the tiniest bit to become going to sweet to frightening, and I think that's minute work, and I really like seeing it. And then, and this kind of is an end of a chapter for him. So, and I'm going to have other opportunities to MVP Ming and everybody else. So, Blair gets
there are plenty coming up. So,
good.
Well, okay, I'm glad you picked him. Now I'm not going to break up with you. I was going to break up with you, but now I think we can stay together for the cast.
Be good radio if you broke up with me. Just saying.
That's true. But I'm not going to break up with you. But I am going to tell you to get the fuck out of here. Leave.
I gotta leave the room.
Go away.
Have fun, guys.
Get out. Oh my gosh. Oh,
I already missed Tony. I already miss him.
I know. I really like Tony. Tony was fun. Right?
I'm glad. That's nice. I like him too. I'm glad
you
that
guys
he's
make
willing.
a cute couple.
Thank you. That's really sweet. Thank you. Okay, he's gone. Whew, we can talk spoilers. You guys did great on no spoiling. It's always a little bit of a we're on edge sometimes because it's hard to talk about stuff without the future. And one thing that I definitely want to bring up, Mark, is that we're getting Hive soon, and I just wanted to ask you about the creation of Hive because he's another really cool one.
Hive was an exciting opportunity. One of the things I would always do with either Marissa or Jed or Jeff Bell is I'd say, is there anything coming up that I need heads up on? Because, I needed time to develop it and everything else. And so Hive went through a lot of R&D between the design, between the alien type eyes that I was thinking of, and the tentacles and everything else that went on. And again, it was about putting in the nuances. So, basically what we did is with Vord, with Brett, he is Hive, and so I motion captured. Max moved his face, so he was all marked up, and he had a cap with a tracking band around it, and so therefore it was about taking his essence, and very much like with Lash. If you notice when Lash does that transformation in that little mini mart, and he does that head up thing, the very last thing that changes is the eyes. It's Blair's eyes that are in Lash in that moment, and then they change to Lash's eyes. So it was a way for me to have the audience remember that the man in the machine kind of thing, that Blair's inside that. And it was the same thing going in with Brett. And it was about getting, that character and all the little sort of, micro movements that happen that we track. So that all translates from Brett's performance into Hive. And so a little thing that I also did with that character, with the animation, was that when Hive had the upper hand, the tentacles were very languid, and they flowed, and they just kind of undulated like this. But when he realized he was being outmaneuvered, you would see the tentacles become rigid, that they would flex. And so it was all these little things just to bring in the emotional aspect of the character.
Cool. That's awesome. I'm excited for Tony to get to that whole arc.
Yeah, Hive's a cool character.
Yeah. David, your next episode is not till season 5, Orientation Part 2. We are literally 2 years away from that. It'll be in December of 2027.
Put it in your calendar.
I'll put it in my calendar. Yeah.
Mark your calendar now. We do, although during the summer we do Dollhouse. So if you ever want to come back and talk about Dollhouse, you have an open invitation. But I do want to ask a little bit about that episode, if you remember, because you go from we're in season 3, we're pretty grounded still, and all of a sudden you're directing them in space. Do you remember coming in and being like, "What has been going on these last?"
Yes,
2 years?
I do remember. That's the first thing I said. I'm sorry. Like, where are we? Oh, we're in space. I'm like, okay, like where in space? Well, it doesn't matter. We're on a spaceship. I'm like, okay. So I actually don't. I have no idea. I had no idea what I was doing. All I remember is Marissa saying, "Oh, we really look for you to like establish this this world for us." And I went, great. And she actually said to me, I think it was the second episode of the season, was it?
Yeah,
was it?
It was, yes.
So she said, do you want to do the first one or the second one? I was like, I don't care. She said, well, I said, which one do you want me to do? She goes like, let's do the second one. I went like, okay. So she said, we need this world to be very different from our other world. And it's, you just have to kind of feel out what we're going to be doing, and let me give you an idea of where we are and how people are acting. And all of a sudden, it's like, wait, I've got blue guys walking around, I've got poor people bumping into each other and trying to like just crazy stuff, which I love. It's my favorite thing.
Actually, one of my favorite shots actually is from David's episode in space, because one of the things is I always say like, space is hard. Space is not easy to do because there's no up, there's no down, there's no left, there's no right. So we did the shot where we pushed into the trawler, where it was Ming and Elizabeth in the opening or whatever. And so we ended up,
and they looked up.
Yeah, they looked up, but we came into it. What I did is I flipped them upside down, so therefore you think that they're orientated to Earth's gravity, but they weren't. They were upside down, and then the thing twists, and then it was that kind of thing. So it was a pretty cool entrance into that moment.
That was great. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love it. That's when we're sitting there and go like this, and Mark looks up like this, like, yeah, so like it'll be right there. I went like, right where? He goes, I said, well, let's just give them a mark so they can both look at the same thing.
Yeah.
And they go like, oh, okay, well, and you're sitting in a set, and you're sitting in a jet with a window, and you're looking out the window and you're trying to figure out exactly not just where you are, but what's happening to the thing you're in, and everything is moving, and that's the best way it should be. You know, it's just a little something to throw you off a little bit and to get you drawn in a little bit.
Right.
And it worked like a charm.
That one was always from the camera guys, from the DPs, like, Kolpack, where's the sun? Which direction is the sun coming from? I go, well, the Earth's over there, the sun's over there. Great, thank you.
Wherever you put the light is where the sun is coming from.
But they would always want to make sure, because I don't know what you're doing, but I want to make sure that our light matches yours. They go, well, I haven't built it yet, so I'll match yours. But if you're asking me, it's there and there's there.
We have a few questions from the chat, but we're running late, as I knew we would. I was like, these two guys, we're going to be going. A good one, a fun one from Alice for Mark that I think a lot of people would want to know is, in your 7 years, can you think of like the thing you had to create that was the most difficult for you?
The biggest, there were several challenges. Ghost Rider was a big challenge.
You love that, though.
Yeah, people are asking about Ghost Rider. I'm glad that you said that, because we've got some questions about that.
Yeah, the Ghost Rider was a challenge, but I think in terms of just a visual effects moment that was a hard one to pull off, was probably the HQ under the lake. And why it was like, you know, the lake opened up by the lighthouse, you know, and the Zephyr would VTOL in, and all the water is cascading down hundreds of feet, right? And so I designed this thing. They said, "Oh, it's under the water." So I had this whole thing iris out like the opening of an aperture of a lens, and then the water's going. And again, you know, they're saying, "Well, why is the water not collecting on there?" Well, I built like these troughs around it where I said there were pumps that were putting the water back out, so it didn't fill the hole up. You know, it's just all logic. But what was difficult about it was the rendering, the simulation of the water. It kept crashing. And I thought, oh my God, are we not going to be able to get this? And to give you an example, like, you know, we're used to like 2 megabytes, you know, a frame of something, of a photograph or whatever. Well, to give you an example, to simulate one section of the waterfall was 15 gigs of information. And the sim kept crashing the computers. They couldn't get through it. So we had to then, so the guys, not me, when I say we, I mean them, the effects animators, they came up with a strategy of having to make it render it in sections. And that's a tricky task because you have this whole thing, but yet the water all has to match each other. So you might be doing a sliver, but then another sliver next to it, you know, has to match that water going across, so it all looked the same. And they pulled it off. But it was a bit of a tightrope kind of moment where I thought, oh man, when are we going to get this? You know. So that was a difficult one.
And that's the kind of thing that we, like, as the audience, we don't like really think about that, you know, like how difficult that is. And that's why we love having folks like you on to tell us, because we appreciate you so much, and we need to know how much work is going into this.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, everything. I mean, to give you, you know, to be an effects animator, the guys who do water and fire and atmospheric stuff, and like, you know, those guys are sort of like, yeah, those guys are sort of like the it's the Rolls Royce of visual effects work. I mean, they're like, you know, I mean, because they take a program called Houdini, which is a physics-based program, and they do things to it that it was never designed to do. But to give you an example, season 4 with Ghost Rider, so we had Ghost Rider with flames, we had the Quinjet afterburners, we had the Zephyr with afterburners, we had all sorts of kind of stuff. You might have maybe 1 or 2 people on a normal show that does effects animation for you, you know, for something. That whole season, we carried Fuse Effects. One house carried 16 effects animators that were week to week working on all the effects animation for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Wow.
That's a lot of people.
What I'm hearing is that we need you back in a year to talk about the Ghost Rider arc when we get there. I want to thank you both, David and Mark, for giving us your time. This was awesome. It's just I love this show so much, and getting to talk to the people who created it it's why I do the podcast. It's we pretend it's so I can make Tony watch the show, but it's really so that I can talk to you guys. So thank you, David. Any final words of send off before we go?
Call me for a dollhouse.
Okay, amazing. We will. You said it. I heard it. Mark, what about you? Any final thoughts?
And final thoughts. I just think there's a lot of really cool stuff coming up that you and your fans know, and Tony doesn't. And I think that season 4 is probably one of the most amazing seasons. It's a 3-act deal divided up, and it's pretty cool. It's probably my favorite season.
It's my favorite season. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Love it so much. Thank you both again. Quick announcement for our listeners. Tony and I are out of town next weekend, but there's no episode to cover on the 23rd. So our 16th episode, we're cheating a little, is getting pushed to November 23rd. So we will see you all on November 23rd. Talk about the next one. I don't know who the guest is yet, but listen, we got Mark yesterday. It could be someone so awesome. Who knows? Thank you both again. Thank you to the live chat. We always appreciate you. I just remembered Maria's not here, so it is up to me to end this stream. Goodbye.